I was never supposed to be home that early. The crew had wrapped up faster than expected, steel delivery postponed, electrician's inspection bumped to Monday, and I figured I'd take the rare chance to surprise Dana. Maybe we'd have lunch, maybe talk like we used to before everything started feeling so scripted. I even stopped to pick up her favorite sandwich from that deli she used to drag me to when we were dating. I had it all planned in my head. Knock on the door, a kiss hello, the startled smile, the warm, familiar hug. But instead, I walked into silence. The living room was empty. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in thin golden slits. No sound of TV, no clatter in the kitchen. Just quiet. The kind that prickles your skin. Dana. I called. Nothing. Then I heard it, muffled voices upstairs. One low, one higher. Laughter, and then something else. A moan. Her moan. At first, I stood still, frozen, like my body hadn't caught up with my brain. Then I moved, slow, like I was underwater. Up the stairs I helped sand and stain myself when we bought this place. The closer I got to our bedroom, the louder the noises became. What sounds? Rhythmic. Desperate. My chest was tight. My mouth dry. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Part of me didn't want to open it. Maybe I already knew. Maybe I just needed to see it with my own eyes to believe it. The door wasn't even fully shut. I pushed it open, and what I saw will never, ever leave me. There she was, my wife, naked, legs spread, pinned beneath a man I didn't recognize. His broad back arched over her. She was gripping the sheets, eyes closed, head thrown back, her mouth open in a silent cry of pleasure. My heart didn't just break. It ruptured. They didn't see me at first. It was the sandwich bag hitting the floor that finally snapped her out of it. Dana's eyes met mine and widened with horror. Oh my God, Jack! The guy, some beefy, tatted-up stranger, rolled off her, scrambling for his jeans like a teenager caught by a parent. I didn't look at him. I didn't care who he was. My eyes were locked on Dana. Jack? I didn't know you were coming home, she stammered, grabbing at the sheets, clutching them to her chest like modesty mattered now. Clearly, I said, my voice hollow. She stepped forward, tears instantly forming. Please, let me explain. Explain? I laughed, but it was a cold, dead thing. I just saw you having sex with another man in our bed. Explain that to me, Dana. It was a mistake, she said quickly. It didn't mean anything. I've just been feeling lost, and he listened. He listened. I repeated. So you fucked him? She flinched. I looked at the bed. Our bed. The one we picked out together. Where we made love, where we talked about kids, where we dreamed. Now it smelled like sweat and betrayal. You know what hurts the most? I said, voice shaking. Not the sex. Not even that it was here. It's your face. You looked happy. Happier than I've seen you in years. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached for me. Jack, I'm sorry. Please, we can talk. Work through this. No, I said, stepping back. We're not working through this. We're not anything anymore. Her face crumpled. Don't say that. I've given you everything, Dana. 17 years. A life. Loyalty. And you spit on it. I never meant to hurt you. Well, congratulations. You did. I turned, walked out of the room. I could hear her crying behind me, calling my name, but it sounded like noise behind glass. My ears were ringing. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet downstairs, threw in clothes without thinking, socks, shirts, underwear, whatever I could stuff in. My hands moved on autopilot, but inside I was collapsing. As I zipped the bag, she came down the stairs in a robe, mascara streaking her face. Jack, please don't go. Let's go to therapy. We can fix this. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I married. The woman I thought I'd grow old with. I don't even know who you are, I said. I opened the door. Sunlight hit my face, warm and mocking. Where will you go? She asked, voice small. I didn't answer. I stepped outside. The door slammed behind me like a gavel hitting the block. And just like that, the man I had been, husband, provider, believer in love, died on that threshold. The motel I checked into that night smelled like mildew and cheap disinfectant. I lay on the lumpy mattress staring at a popcorn ceiling that looked like it was slowly peeling away. My phone buzzed every few minutes. Dana's calls, texts, then voicemails. I didn't listen to a single one. Just watched them come in and slide away into the void. I had nothing to say. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My mind kept playing the scene on a loop. Her face, twisted in pleasure, then panic. his hands on her body. The sounds. God, the sounds. I felt like something had been scraped out of me. Hollowed. By morning, I looked like hell. My face was gaunt in the mirror, eyes rimmed red. I splashed water on my face, packed my things, and walked out without saying a word to the front desk. I didn't have family close. My parents were both gone. No siblings. Dana had been my family for 17 years. Everything in my life was wrapped around her, and now, suddenly, she was toxic. Untouchable. My house wasn't mine anymore. My bed was defiled. I didn't belong anywhere. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called Logan. We'd been best friends in high school, inseparable until life pulled us into different cities, different careers. We still texted, saw each other every year or two, but nothing deep. Still, when I heard his voice on the other end of the line, calm, steady, familiar, I cracked. "Hey man," I said, my voice thin. "Jack?" he replied, already alert. "You okay?" "No," I said quietly. "Not really. I caught Dana cheating." Silence. Then, "Shit. Yeah. Where are you?" I told him. "Get your ass over here. Couch is yours for as long as you need it." "Are you sure?" "I don't want to." "Jack," he cut me off, firm. "Shut up and drive." I drove. His house was about 40 minutes away, just outside town, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac with big oaks and crooked mailboxes. As I pulled up, something in me eased, just a little. I hadn't seen this place in years, but it looked exactly how I remembered it from when his parents still lived there. Logan had moved in after they passed, said he couldn't let it go. I always thought that was sentimental, maybe even weak. Now I understood it perfectly. But it wasn't Logan who opened the door. It was his mom. No, not his mom. Just a mom. Judith. Gray hair tied back, eyes sharp as ever, wearing a cardigan like she'd stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting. But when she saw me, her expression softened instantly. "Jack Whitaker," she said, like she was both surprised and not at all. "You look like you've been dragged through the dust." "I feel worse than I look," I admitted. Without a word, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I hadn't been hugged like that in a long time. Tight, grounded, not out of pity, but out of recognition. Like she knew what kind of storm I'd walked through. "Come on," she said. "Get in here before the neighbors start inventing stories." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. Same as it had 20 years ago. Logan came out of the kitchen barefoot, wearing a faded Springsteen tee and holding a coffee mug. He looked older, more lines around the eyes, a little thicker around the waist, but still Logan. Still my friend. "Jesus," he muttered, pulling me in for a quick bro hug. "You weren't kidding." "Nope. Judith already made a pot of coffee," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. "You're home, man." Home. That word hit harder than I expected. We sat in the kitchen for a while. I didn't say much, just the basics. Dana. Another man. Our bed. The whole thing. Judith didn't flinch. Logan just kept nodding, occasionally muttering, "What a bitch." I didn't argue. Eventually, Judith stood and said, "The guest room's being used this weekend, but the couch has fresh sheets. You'll be comfortable." I blinked. "Guest room?" Logan scratched the back of his neck. "My aunt's visiting. You remember her? Monica, my mom's younger sister." And then I saw her. She walked in from the hallway, towel around her neck, earbuds in, wearing tight yoga pants and a tank top that clung to curves that weren't there the last time I saw her. "Holy hell. Jack?" she said, stopping mid-step. "Monica?" I asked, blinking. "Jesus, you haven't aged." She laughed, pulling the earbuds out. "Liar. But thanks." There was something about her. Sharp eyes, playful smile, a little dangerous in the way she carried herself. I remembered her vaguely from years ago, but now she was all woman. Early 40s maybe, but effortlessly stunning. "I heard you're in need of a crash pad," she said, stepping close. "You're lucky Judith loves strays. I'll try not to piss on the carpet." She smirked. "Try all you want." Her voice was playful, her presence magnetic. I wasn't ready for it, but damn, I noticed. That scent she wore, something faint and spicy, lingered after she passed by. I caught myself watching her hips sway as she walked into the living room. Logan chuckled. "She flirts with everybody. Don't let it get to your head." Too late. Judith returned with a blanket and pillow. "You'll be okay here, Jack. You're not alone." And for the first time in 24 hours, I believed her. I wasn't okay. Not yet. But maybe. I wasn't entirely broken either. The house fell quiet after dinner. Judith had made roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and some kind of green beans that actually made me want seconds. Monica drank white wine with ice cubes in it and kept slipping me these glances across the table, half teasing, half curious. Logan, mercifully, didn't push me to talk. We just ate like it was any normal Thursday night. But I wasn't normal. Nothing was. Later, Logan disappeared into his bedroom with his laptop. Project for work, he mumbled, shutting the door behind him. And I was left alone on the couch. Judith had fluffed the cushions and laid out a thick wool blanket. There was a small lamp on the side table, casting a soft amber glow across the room. Family photos lined the shelves. Logan as a kid, Judith with her late husband, Monica at what looked like a beach resort in a sun hat and sunglasses, holding a margarita. I stared at the ceiling again, just like in the motel. The fan spun slowly overhead. Every tick of the blades seemed to echo. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud. It filled every crack in me, every unspoken question, every unexhaled scream. I lay there trying not to replay the image in my head, Dana's body tangled with his, the way her mouth parted, her hands in his hair, her joy. But the loop started again, like it always did. And this time it felt longer, slower, hungrier. I turned onto my side, clutching the pillow tighter. My chest ached. My throat was dry. My mind kept cycling between fury and sorrow, between a need to cry and a desire to punch a wall. I felt like a man being eaten alive from the inside. "Can't sleep," came a voice, soft and close. I sat up. Judith stood there in a robe, holding a steaming mug. Her hair was tied back, glasses low on her nose. She looked less like Logan's mom and more like a monk delivering peace. "I figured," she said, stepping into the room. "Chamomile with honey. Helps with the tight chest kind of nights." I accepted it, surprised by how warm the mug felt in my hands. She sat beside me on the edge of the couch, without asking. Not too close, not too far. Just enough to make me feel like I wasn't alone. "You don't have to talk," she said after a moment. "But if you want to, I'll listen." I didn't know where to start. Didn't know how to form words that didn't come out jagged or pathetic. But the warmth of the tea, the softness of the light, the sheer weight of everything, it cracked something. "It was our bed," I whispered. Judith didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "She was smiling," I said, laughing, like she was alive again. I haven't seen her like that in years. And then the words just spilled. Not all at once, but in pieces. I told her how Dana had been distant, how I'd made excuses for months, how I'd convinced myself she was just tired, stressed, distracted, how I'd stopped asking questions because I didn't want the answers. I didn't say it all perfectly. Some things came out fractured, scrambled. A memory here, a bitter laugh there. I even started crying halfway through and tried to cover my face like some ashamed little boy. But Judith didn't move. She just sat there. Let me fall apart in slow motion. "I built that life," I said. "I built it. Gave her everything. Stability. Loyalty. A house. Years. And it just," my voice cracked. "It wasn't enough." "She was the fool," Judith said gently. "Not you." I looked at her. "I've seen what kind of man you are, Jack," she continued. "Even when you were just a gangly teenager sneaking beers with Logan. You were always the steady one. The honest one. Not perfect, but solid. And you gave her that. If she wanted something else, that's not your failing. That's hers." The room swelled with silence again, but it felt different now, like it was making room for me. I wiped my eyes. "Thanks for the tea." She gave a little smile and patted my knee. "You've got a place here. Don't forget that." As she stood and turned to leave, another figure appeared in the hallway. Monica. She was in shorts and an oversized t-shirt that hung just enough off one shoulder to catch the light. Her eyes met mine, and I could see it. She'd heard most of that. Maybe all of it. "Sorry," she said, her voice soft. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Judith waved her off. "He's all yours. I'm going to bed." Monica stepped into the room as Judith padded upstairs. She folded her arms, leaned against the wall, watching me with that same faint smile she wore at dinner. "First night's always the worst," she said. I nodded, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. She came closer, sat cross-legged at the far end of the couch, feet tucked under her. "You know," she said after a beat, "I walked in on my ex in the back seat of our Volvo with a yoga instructor named Bryce." My eyebrows rose. "Bryce? Oh yeah. Top knot. Vegan. Smelled like tea tree oil and arrogance. I laughed despite myself. It felt weird. And good. Like I hadn't used that muscle in too long. Did you beat the crap out of him? I asked. Nope. Just took a picture, printed it on a mug, and left it in the kitchen when I moved out. Now I was laughing harder. She grinned. See? You're not dead yet. I looked at her. The curve of her smile, the heat in her eyes. That subtle tilt of her head, like she was peeling me open and liking what she saw underneath. And in that moment, with Monica barefoot on one end of the couch and my ex-wife's ghost finally fading into the background, I felt something strange. Not healing, not forgiveness, but maybe the first breath of air that didn't burn. Morning came too early. I wasn't sure when I'd finally drifted off, but sunlight was already spilling through the living room window when I opened my eyes. My neck ached from the awkward angle of the couch cushion, my shirt was damp with sweat, and my mouth felt like sandpaper. I sat up slowly, blinking through the haze. The smell of coffee pulled me toward the kitchen. Judith was at the stove, humming softly, her robe tied snug. Monica sat at the table, barefoot, hair pulled into a messy bun, reading something on her tablet. She wore one of those soft knit tops that hung low on her shoulder again, and I caught a flash of dark lace underneath. She looked up at me, eyes scanning the damage on my face. You look like you wrestled with your soul and lost, she said, half smiling. I think I did. Judith handed me a cup of coffee without asking how I took it. Logan already left for work. I said to tell you he stocked the fridge with beer and that you're banned from touching his jazz records. I smirked, grateful for the smallness of the moment. Warmth, caffeine, the soft clink of silverware. There was something oddly comforting in the domestic quiet. I sat down across from Monica, and for a few moments we just sipped, letting silence speak for us. Judith finally broke it. When my husband cheated on me, I baked 27 loaves of banana bread. I blinked. Wait, what? She nodded. One for every year we were married. I gave them out to the church, to neighbors, to the postman. I was halfway through the 25th before I realized I didn't even like banana bread. Monica laughed. I remember that face. You started putting rum in it by loaf number 18. Judith grinned. Best thing I ever did. Got me drunk, got me closure, and no one had the guts to ask me about my divorce while eating warm banana bread. There was a pause. Then Monica looked at me. Mine wasn't banana bread. It was tequila. And regrettable tattoos. I raised an eyebrow. You have tattoos? She rolled up her sleeve and revealed a small, faded cactus on the inside of her forearm. Drunken impulse during my fuck him, I'm free phase. Bryce hated tattoos. So naturally, I got one the day the papers were signed. I couldn't help but smile. Looks good on you. She smirked, holding my gaze for a half second too long. Yeah? Maybe I'll show you the second one sometime. Judith groaned. For the love of decency, Monica. What? I'm just saying. Recovery has stages. I looked down at my coffee. I didn't feel recovered. I didn't even feel like me yet. I don't even know what to do next, I admitted. I don't have a plan. No backup. Judith reached over, resting her hand lightly on mine. You don't need a plan today. You need rest. You need food. And you need to know you're not broken. Monica added, and maybe a long shower. You kind of smell like grief and couch cushions. That actually made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in what felt like days. After breakfast, I took a long, scalding hot shower in the upstairs bathroom. The steam filled the room, fogging the mirror, and for the first time since that awful afternoon, I didn't feel like the ghost of a man. I felt tired, sure, but real, present. When I came downstairs, Judith was gone, some weekly church group thing, and Monica was curled up on the couch, blanket around her legs, flipping through a book. Hey, she said, glancing up. Hey. She patted the space next to her. I sat. For a moment, we just existed together in the quiet. Then, softly, she asked, You ever talked to anyone about your own shit before? I mean, before this? Not really. I kept it inside. Always thought. You know, no one wants to hear a man complain about feeling empty. She nodded. I used to think that too. Then I ended up on the floor of my condo with a bottle of gin and half a bag of Cheetos, crying over a Spotify playlist called Songs to Bury Your Marriage To. I chuckled. That's specific. Very. But that night was the first time I called Judith. And when I showed up on this couch 3 years ago, I realized something. Grief doesn't have to be solitary. I turned to her, studied her profile, the sharpness of her jaw, the way her lips parted slightly when she spoke. You talk like someone who got through it. I talk like someone who's still getting through it, she said, glancing at me. But I'm not bleeding anymore. That's progress. We sat for a while, not touching, not needing to. There was an ease with her, an honesty I hadn't expected. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open, something better than numb. As the afternoon faded into evening, she leaned back, her leg brushing mine. I felt it, noticed it, didn't move away. You're doing better than you think, Jack. I turned to her. Doesn't feel like it. She smiled gently. That's how it always feels in the middle. And maybe she was right. Because while the ache still lived inside me, gnawing at the walls I used to think were unbreakable, I also felt something else. Not hope, but maybe the shape of it, just barely forming. The days blurred. I stayed on Logan's couch longer than I intended. He never once made me feel like a burden, but guilt crept in anyway, between sips of coffee, in the pauses between conversations, in the quiet just before sleep. Each morning, I woke a little earlier. Each night, I stayed up a little later, haunted by the image of Dana's body tangled in someone else's arms, her skin flushed, her eyes wild in a way she hadn't looked at me in years. But something else began to happen. This house, it had its own rhythm, its own energy. And most of that came from Monica. She was everywhere. Always barefoot, always in motion. Sometimes in leggings and a tank top that hugged her body like a second skin. Sometimes in shorts and an old concert tee with the sleeves cut off. She moved like she didn't care who was watching, but I was always watching. It started with the little things. A passing touch on my shoulder that lingered a second too long. A casual lean over the kitchen counter, her tank top dipping just enough to catch my eye. A smirk when she caught me looking, and I knew she caught me. She was dangerous. But God, she made me feel alive. One morning, I came into the kitchen and she was standing on her tiptoes, reaching for a box of cereal on the top shelf. Her shirt lifted just enough to reveal the soft line of her back, the curve of her hip. I think I see your strategy, I said. She turned, grinning. And what's that? Lure a broken man in with breakfast and bare skin. Don't knock it. Comfort food and cleavage works better than therapy. I laughed, but something simmered under the words. She poured 2 bowls, handed me one, and leaned against the counter beside me. Her bare arm brushed mine. You always this handsy with house guests? I asked, more playful than accusing. Only the tragic ones with sad eyes, she replied, flicking her spoon at me. You've got that whole wounded lumberjack thing going on. I scoffed. Lumberjack? You give off used to build things, now builds emotional walls energy. That actually made me laugh. A real, deep belly laugh that startled me. I hadn't laughed like that in weeks. She looked pleased. Later that afternoon, Judith went to her book club, leaving us alone in the house. Logan was still at work. Monica emerged from the guest room wearing a black tank top and tight jeans, hair pulled back, hoop earrings dangling. She smelled like vanilla and heat. Going somewhere? I asked from the couch. She shrugged. Was thinking about hitting that wine bar down the road. Get some air. Maybe flirt with a stranger. I looked at her longer than I should have. Why flirt with a stranger when I'm right here? She tilted her head, intrigued. Is that you flirting, Jack? Maybe. She murmured, stepping closer. You're rusty. Forgive me. It's been a while since I wanted to. That softened something in her face. Her eyes studied me, not with pity, but curiosity, like she was trying to see what was still intact beneath the damage. You want to come with me? She asked. Could use a wingman. I hesitated. What kind of wingman? The kind who doesn't judge me for having 3 glasses of wine and talking shit about my ex. I can handle that. We went. The wine bar was dimly lit, filled with the kind of music that made people lean closer when they talked. We took a table near the back, tucked into a booth. Monica ordered something dry and red. I had bourbon. The conversation started light. Music, movies, ridiculous dating stories. But somewhere between her second glass and my third drink, the edges of our words got softer. You're different now, she said suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? You were always the clean-cut type. Buttoned up. Serious. But now, there's something raw in you. I don't hate it. Thanks, I guess. She leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. You ever wonder if this kind of destruction is the only way some of us wake up? I thought about Dana. About the years I spent smoothing out problems, ignoring signs, pretending that everything was okay because I was terrified of the alternative. I don't know, I said, but I don't want to sleepwalk through the rest of my life. Her gaze lingered. Heavy. Weighted. Good, she said, voice low. Because you're waking up. Back at the house, the mood was different. Charged. The air between us thick with something unspoken. We stood in the hallway longer than necessary, neither of us making a move, but neither willing to say goodnight. Her eyes dropped to my mouth. I almost leaned in. Almost. But I stepped back. Thanks for the drinks, I said, my voice a little hoarse. She smiled softly. Anytime. As she disappeared into the guest room, I stood alone for a moment, heart racing. I didn't sleep well that night, not because of the past, but because of the present, because something inside me had shifted. And for the first time since Dana's betrayal, I wasn't thinking about what I lost. I was thinking about what I wanted. The next morning, I felt like I was moving through fog. I remembered every second of the night before. The wine bar, the booth, Monica's gaze sliding over me like silk, the charged silence in the hallway before we parted. It hadn't been a kiss. Not even a touch, really. But something had shifted, and it was undeniable now. And it scared the hell out of me. Judith was already gone when I wandered into the kitchen. Logan was at work. That left me and Monica again, like the house had conspired to place her in my orbit as often as possible. She was at the stove, back to me, hair pulled into a loose braid that revealed the elegant line of her neck. A loose sweater slid off one shoulder. No bra. I tried not to notice, but I did. Every detail. She glanced back over her shoulder. You're up late. Didn't sleep much. She nodded, flipping a pancake. Me neither. There was something in her voice, low, measured. Like we were both pretending we hadn't stood a foot apart last night, nearly daring the other to close the distance. She made a plate for each of us. We sat at the counter side by side. The usual banter was gone, replaced by a quiet awareness that buzzed beneath every motion, every glance. Midway through eating, she said, You ever think about what you would have done differently? With her? I paused. All the time. She looked at me. Like what? I leaned back, swallowing hard. I would have listened more, touched more, asked questions I was afraid to hear the answers to. She studied me. That's honest. What about you? I asked, voice quieter. With Bryce. She smirked. I would have walked away the first time he made me feel small. Instead, I made excuses for him for 6 years. We both fell quiet again. Then she said, You're not small, Jack. She didn't leave because of something wrong in you. I met her eyes. Then why do I feel like I wasn't enough? She reached over, her hand brushing mine. A light touch, casual, almost, but it stayed a second longer than necessary. When she pulled away, I felt the imprint of her skin on mine like a ghost. That afternoon, Logan invited a few friends over to watch the game. It was loud, full of laughter and shouting, and for a while I faded into the noise, glad for the distraction. But every time I looked up, Monica was there, in the doorway, across the room, on the stairs, watching me with that same half-curious, half-hungry look, like she was still deciding what to do with me. When the house finally emptied and Logan went to bed, I was left in the living room, staring at the dark TV screen. I didn't realize she was still up until she walked in with a glass of red wine. You're quiet tonight, she said, settling on the far end of the couch. Lot on my mind. Want company or silence? I hesitated. Company. She tucked her legs under her, curling against the armrest. Her shirt slid lower, revealing more of her collarbone, the faint edge of a tattoo I hadn't seen before. What is that? I asked, nodding at it. She looked down. Oh, this? She tugged the fabric down slightly, revealing a small script that read Burn to Rebuild. Got it after the divorce. Cheesy, I know. No, I said softly. It's honest. We sat in silence again, the air thick with everything unsaid. Then, her voice, quiet, deliberate. You almost kissed me last night. I turned to her. Her expression was open, calm, unapologetic. Yeah, I admitted. I did. Why didn't you? I looked down at my hands. Because it felt too fast. Too soon. And because I was afraid if I kissed you, I wouldn't stop there. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. And would that be such a bad thing? I swallowed hard. She shifted, moving closer. Not too much, just enough that our knees touched. Her fingers found my wrist, trailed up my forearm slowly. I don't want to play games, she said. but I want to know what it feels like. You. Not the sad version. The real you. I could feel her breath, warm and even. I leaned in, slowly, cautiously, and she didn't move, didn't flinch. Her eyes searched mine, waiting. But I didn't kiss her. I lifted her hand instead, holding it between both of mine. Not yet, I said. She blinked. Why? Because when I kiss you, I don't want to feel like I'm escaping something. I want it to be real. And right now, I don't trust my own motives. She nodded, slowly pulling her hand back. That's probably the most attractive answer you could have given. I chuckled, the tension easing. But something lingered. Her hand brushed mine again, this time slower. Deliberate. I'm not asking for forever, Jack, she whispered. I'm just asking you to stop pretending you don't feel this too. And then she leaned in. Not all the way, not yet, but close enough that the edges of our breath mixed. Her fingers grazed my thigh. Her eyes searched mine one more time, and then she stood. Good night, Jack. And just like that, she walked away, hips swaying, leaving me there with a fire slowly building in my chest. I didn't sleep again that night. But this time, it wasn't grief that kept me awake. It was want. It rained the next night. A soft, steady downpour that drummed gently against the roof and windows, soaking the world in quiet. The kind of rain that makes everything feel still, reflective, a little haunted. I was curled up on the couch, an old hoodie pulled over my head, a blanket across my legs, pretending to watch some forgettable movie while the storm tapped out its lullaby. My mind wasn't on the screen. It hadn't been for days. I couldn't stop thinking about Monica. The way her eyes lingered. The way her voice dropped when we were alone. That almost kiss that left my skin buzzing long after she walked away. There was a fire growing inside me, and I didn't know whether to run from it or feed it. The couch creaked under new weight. I looked up. Judith. She was in a soft flannel robe, her hair loose around her shoulders, silver threads catching the dim light. She held a steaming mug and handed it to me without a word. Chamomile, again. Warm. Steady. You're doing it again, she said gently, settling into the armchair across from me. Doing what? Staring into the void like it owes you answers. I gave a tired smile. It hasn't coughed up much. We sat quietly for a moment, the only sound the hush of rain and the soft clink of her spoon in the empty mug she placed on the side table. I heard Monica and I aren't the only ones you've been talking to, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Logan mentioned it, she continued. That you've been opening up, letting things out. That's good. Yeah, I said. I think the pressure was going to kill me. She nodded. Grief's a funny thing. It starts with heartbreak. But if you're not careful, it ends with forgetting who you are. That hit me. Hard. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. You're not what she did to you. You're not her betrayal. You're not some discarded husband. What if I feel like one? Then let me remind you of something, she said. You're still here. Still capable of being seen, heard, even wanted. There was weight in her voice, but also warmth. And for a moment, it felt like the world had gone still again. She stood, walked over to me slowly. Come on, she said. Get up. I blinked. What? Get off the damn couch. I did. She reached for my hands, her palms cool, firm, and guided them gently up to her waist. She rested her hands on my chest. No music, she whispered, but we can still dance. So we did, right there, in the quiet living room, to the rhythm of rain and breath. I held Judith in my arms, her body warm against mine, and for a few long minutes, I didn't feel hollow. I felt human. She looked up at me, her eyes soft, and I knew. The kiss came like an exhale. Her lips brushed mine, delicate, uncertain, trembling. She paused just long enough to let me stop her. I didn't. We kissed again. Slower this time. Deeper. Her fingers curled in the fabric of my hoodie, pulling me close. I felt everything in that moment. The loneliness, the ache, the electric charge of being touched for the first time by someone who saw me. She pulled back slightly, resting her forehead against mine. You okay? She asked. I don't know, I whispered. But that felt real. It was. I stared at her. This woman who had opened her home, her arms, her heart, and something inside me cracked open again. Not broken, just released. I didn't expect it to be you, I said quietly. She smiled sadly. Me neither. We sat back down. The kiss lingered in the air between us, a secret neither of us was ready to unpack. Not yet. I'm not rushing you, she said. And I'm not asking for anything. I know. She stood, squeezed my shoulder. Get some sleep, Jack. As she walked toward the hallway, she paused, looking back at me with something unreadable in her eyes. Maybe caution, maybe longing, maybe both. And then she was gone. I sat there long after she'd left, the taste of her kiss still on my lips, her warmth still pressed into my skin. It wasn't a kiss of passion. Not yet. It was something worse. It was tenderness. And after everything I'd been through, that was what terrified me the most. The morning after the kiss, the house felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just off, like something had shifted slightly out of alignment and no one had noticed except me. I moved through the kitchen with care, my thoughts still tangled in the warmth of Judith's lips, the way she held me with steady hands and eyes that had seen far more than mine ever could. She didn't bring it up at breakfast. In fact, she barely said more than 2 words. Just a soft good morning and a half smile as she passed me the butter. I respected it. Maybe we were both pretending it hadn't happened. Or maybe we were letting it settle into the silence, waiting to see what it became. But Monica? She noticed. It wasn't even 5 minutes after she came downstairs, still in her robe, hair damp from the shower, skin glowing from sleep, that her eyes darted between us and narrowed slightly. She didn't say a word at first, but the air tightened when she entered the room, like the temperature had dropped a few degrees. You two have a late night? She asked lightly, pouring herself coffee. Judith didn't miss a beat. Just a little tea and conversation. Monica said. Guess I missed the invite. I looked at Judith, then back at Monica, unsure how to play it. Judith kept her face neutral, her attention focused on her toast. Monica, though, had already turned those sharp, clever eyes on me. She didn't say anything else, but that smirk, that knowing, almost amused curve of her lips, told me everything. She was putting pieces together, and she wasn't mad. No, Monica didn't get jealous. She got interested. The rest of the day played out like a long, slow chess match. Judith remained calm, maternal, quiet. She moved through the house as always, cooking, tidying, humming to herself. She never looked at me too long, never gave anything away. Monica, on the other hand, ramped up. It started small, leaning over the counter a little more than usual, brushing past me in the hallway, her fingers grazing mine when she handed me the remote. Then, sometime after lunch, I caught her watching me from the kitchen door. Her eyes lingered, smoldered, and when she noticed me noticing, she didn't look away. That night, Logan went out with co-workers, Judith retreated early with a book, and Monica and I were left in the living room alone. I sat on the couch nursing a beer, pretending to watch something forgettable on Netflix. She entered barefoot, a glass of wine in hand, wearing yoga pants and a faded band tee that looked like it had been slept in, and yet it clung to her like it was meant to. She sat next to me, close. So, she said, swirling her wine. You and Judith. I froze. What about us? She smiled slowly. You kissed her. I didn't answer. You don't have to deny it, she added. She hasn't stopped humming since she came downstairs. I rubbed the back of my neck. I didn't plan it. You think kisses like that ever are? I looked at her, trying to gauge her reaction. There was no anger in her voice. Just curiosity, intrigue, and something else. Are you mad? I asked. She leaned closer, placing her wine glass on the coffee table. Mad? No. Surprised? A little. But I've also been watching you for days, Jack. You've got this thing inside you. All that heat, that ache. I figured it would break through somewhere. Her hand slid to my knee, fingers resting there, light but electric. I just thought it would be with me. My heart thudded. She moved closer, her leg pressed against mine. I could smell her perfume, earthy and warm, laced with something spicy. Her lips were inches from mine now, her voice a low murmur. Do you feel it too? She whispered. Or am I imagining it? I feel it, I said, barely above a breath. She nodded slowly. Good. Then she kissed me. Not soft. Not cautious like Judith's. This kiss was fire. Hungry. Bold. Her hand slid up my thigh, her lips parting mine with a kind of desperation that made my entire body react. My hands found her waist, then her back, then her hips, and for a moment, everything blurred. But then, I pulled back. She blinked, surprised. Monica, I said, my voice rough. This is complicated. She smiled. You think I don't know that? Her thumb brushed my jaw. I'm not asking you to choose, she said. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you. And I think part of you wants me too. I couldn't argue. We stared at each other, the storm of it all swirling silently between us. Then she stood, the kiss still burning on my lips, and whispered, "Good night, Jack." And just like Judith had the night before, she left me there, buzzing, breathless, and completely unsure which direction I was falling. Because now, I wasn't just drawn to one woman. I was caught between two. And the most dangerous part? They both wanted me. The storm rolled in hard that night. Thunder cracked above the roof like the sky itself was breaking apart, and rain lashed against the windows in thick, angry sheets. I was on the couch again, a blanket around my shoulders, staring into the shadows dancing across the darkened living room. The air felt charged, not just from the storm, but from everything that had been building. Judith's kiss still lived in my chest. Monica's still burned on my lips. And I couldn't stop thinking about both of them. I tried to read. Couldn't. Tried to sleep. Didn't. Instead, I paced the hallway, footsteps silent against the hardwood. The guest rooms were down the hall, Judith's at the end, Monica's just off to the side. The lights under both doors were off, but I knew neither of them was sleeping. I didn't knock on either door, but one of them opened. Monica stood there in nothing but a long, dark t-shirt and bare legs, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes unreadable. I couldn't sleep, I said. She stepped aside. Me either. I walked in. The door clicked shut behind me, and for a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then she crossed the space between us and kissed me. There was no hesitation this time. No questions. No holding back. It was fire from the first touch, her hands in my hair, my arms wrapping around her waist, our bodies crashing together like waves. Months of numbness, days of tension, hours of wanting, all of it exploded in that moment. Her shirt hit the floor. My breath caught in my throat. She was beautiful in a way that wasn't polished or staged. It was real, lived in, womanly. She looked at me like she'd been waiting for this, like she knew it was going to happen, and had simply been patient enough to let me catch up. I kissed my way down her neck, over her collarbone, across the soft curve of her chest. She arched into me, fingers clawing lightly at my back, breathing ragged. We stumbled to the bed. Clothes vanished. Sheets tangled. Her body moved against mine with a rhythm that felt familiar and yet brand new. She whispered my name, not desperately, but with intent, like she was claiming me. And I let her. I needed to be claimed. Needed to feel something that wasn't betrayal or shame. Needed to lose myself in the heat of someone who wanted me, not out of pity or rebound, but out of desire. The sex was raw, unfiltered, urgent, but it wasn't careless. It was release. When it was over, we lay tangled in silence, our skin sticky with sweat, breath slowing. She traced lazy circles on my chest with her fingertips. "No regrets?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. I shook my head. No. She propped herself on one elbow, watching me. I meant what I said the other night. I'm not asking for anything. I nodded. I know. And I believed her. But I also knew nothing was ever that simple. We both dozed for a bit, bodies pressed close, the storm still rumbling outside. At some point I got up, pulled on my boxers, and stepped out into the hallway, needing air, needing to breathe. My heart was still pounding. That's when I saw Judith. She stood at the kitchen sink in her robe, pouring a glass of water. Her face turned toward me, expression unreadable, lips parted slightly. We stared at each other across the dim light. She didn't ask where I'd come from. She didn't need to. Her eyes dropped to my bare chest, then back up. She gave a small, sad smile. "Storm keeping you up?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, voice hoarse. "That, and everything else." She walked over slowly and handed me the water. "You don't have to explain," she said. But that only made it worse. "I didn't plan it," I said. "It just happened." She nodded, her hand brushing mine as she passed the glass. "I told you I wasn't asking for anything. And I meant it." I stared at her, guilt now twisting in my gut, not because of what I'd done with Monica, but because Judith had been kind. Grounding. She'd kissed me with care. And I'd taken all that and let lust drive me into another woman's bed the very next night. "I didn't want to hurt you," I said. "You didn't," she replied, and for a second I almost believed her. But her voice was too steady, too rehearsed. She stepped closer, touched my arm, then kissed my cheek, just a press of lips against skin, soft and mothering and final. Get some sleep, she said. And then she walked past me, into the dark hallway, her bare feet silent on the floor. I stood there, drinking the rest of the water slowly, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. I'd wanted to feel alive again. I'd gotten what I wanted. But as I returned to Monica's bed and slipped back under the sheets beside her warm, waiting body, something cold moved inside me. Desire had replaced pain, but it had brought its own kind of complication. Morning arrived, but the warmth from the night before didn't. Monica was still curled against me when I opened my eyes. Her breath slow, steady, peaceful. The storm had passed. Outside, sunlight filtered through the curtains like nothing had changed, but everything had. I slid out of bed carefully, pulled on my clothes, and walked barefoot into the hallway. The house was quiet, still, but the silence didn't feel safe anymore. It felt heavy, aware. I made coffee and stood at the sink while it brewed, staring out the window at the dripping trees. A squirrel darted across the fence. Life went on, but inside me, something had cracked. I didn't regret the night with Monica. Not exactly. But now that the fire had cooled, I couldn't ignore the question gnawing at my ribs. Was this healing? Or just another escape? Judith walked in a few minutes later, still in her robe, hair pulled up. She gave me a small nod, then poured herself a cup without a word. We stood there like co-workers sharing space in a too-quiet break room, pretending not to notice the elephant in the kitchen. Finally, she broke the silence. You're not the first man who's confused touch with direction. I looked at her, startled. She didn't say it with judgment, just experience. Judith. She raised a hand. Don't apologize. I told you I didn't want anything from you, and I meant it. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel something. And I'd be lying if I said watching you choose someone else didn't sting. Just a little. I nodded slowly. You've been kind to me. I don't want to. You didn't know me anything, she cut in gently. You're hurting. You needed comfort. And Monica? Well, Monica knows how to offer that. I stared at the floor, the guilt crawling up my spine. It wasn't just about sex. No, she said. But that doesn't mean it was love either. Her words landed like stones. She walked out after that, coffee in hand, not angry, just done with the conversation. And that hurt more than if she'd screamed at me. Later, I found Monica out back, sitting on the porch steps in leggings and a hoodie, barefoot, sipping from a wine glass even though it wasn't yet noon. You left early, she said without looking at me. I didn't want to wake you. She nodded, eyes still on the yard. You thinking about running? The question hit harder than it should have. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. She looked up at me then, eyes sharp. It was real, Jack. Last night. That wasn't just body heat and rebound. I felt you. I know, I said. I did too. But, I sighed, running a hand through my hair. But I don't know if I'm ready to feel anything yet. Not like this. Not with anyone. She nodded slowly, swallowing her disappointment like it was a bitter pill. At least you're not lying to me. That's something. I sat beside her. The wood was cool beneath us. I think part of me wanted this to be the answer, I said. The thing that made the pain disappear. And you made me feel wanted. That mattered. But it wasn't the fix, she finished for me. No. We sat in silence again, this time not heavy, just true. I wasn't looking for love either, she said after a while. I just didn't want to feel invisible anymore. Her words cracked something open in me. I reached over and took her hand. Held it. Just like that. No heat. No fire. Just two people sitting in the ruins of something that felt beautiful for a minute. That night, Logan returned and noticed the shift immediately. You look like you've just crawled out of an emotional car crash, he said bluntly as I passed him in the hallway. Not far off. He clapped me on the shoulder. Whatever happened, I hope it leads somewhere better. Later, alone in the guest bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. Not the wrecked man I'd been after Dana. Not the lover from last night. Something in between. A man untangling himself from grief, guilt, and desire. And that clarity, the hard, uncomfortable truth, settled in. I wasn't ready to be with anyone. Because I still hadn't figured out who I was without her. Not Monica, not Judith, not even Dana. Just me. I went to bed that night alone, and for the first time, it felt right. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do after losing everything is choosing yourself. She showed up on a Wednesday. Unannounced, of course. That was always Dana's style. Spontaneity packaged as charm, even when the timing was selfish. I had just stepped out of the shower, still towel drying my hair, when I heard a knock at the front door. I opened it to find her standing there on the porch, damp from the drizzle, hair tied back, makeup soft, but familiar. Too familiar. She looked me over like I was a memory. "Hey, Jack," she said, her voice tentative. "Can we talk?" I stared at her for a second, uncertain if I should even let her in. But I stepped aside, and she walked in like she still had a place here, like the betrayal hadn't burned the foundation down to ash. She stood in the middle of the living room, hugging herself. "You look good," she offered. I didn't respond. "I heard you left work, that you'd been staying with Logan. I needed to see you." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because I made a mistake." I gave a quiet laugh. "That's an understatement." "I was confused," she said quickly. "I felt neglected. You were always working. We stopped connecting. I tried to talk to you about it, and you just—" I cut her off. "And so you fucked someone else?" Her jaw tightened. But to her credit, she didn't deny it. "I thought I wanted something new. I thought I deserved more. But the truth is, I got scared. I panicked." I folded my arms, not angry, just tired. "You didn't panic, Dana. You chose. And now that it blew up in your face, you're back here?" She stepped closer. "I've changed." "No," I said. "You lost." She blinked. And that was the moment I realized I didn't want her back. Not even a little. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't recognize the man who once thought she was my future. He was gone. She tried to touch my hand, and I gently pulled away. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I'm done." Her eyes glistened. "There's really no chance." "There was. Before you lied. Before I saw who you really were." She stood there for a moment, nodding slowly, lips pressed tight to keep from crying. Then she turned and walked out without another word. When the door clicked shut, I felt it. That exhale I hadn't known I was holding for weeks. Not rage. Not sorrow. Relief. Monica was in the backyard, tending to the little herb garden near the fence. She saw Dana leave. Of course she did. When I stepped outside, she looked up. "You okay?" she asked. "I am." "You tell her off?" "No," I said. "Didn't need to." She smirked. "You've changed." I think I finally started waking up. She wiped her hands on her jeans. "So what now?" I looked at her for a long moment. She was beautiful and kind and bold in all the ways I wasn't. And still, this wasn't about her. "I need to go," I said. Her expression didn't shift. She just nodded. "I figured," she said. "You've been walking toward that door for a while now." I stepped closer, leaned in, and kissed her forehead, softly. Not like a lover, like a thank you. "For everything," I said. "You'll be okay," she replied. That afternoon, I packed the rest of my things into the trunk of my car. Judith hugged me tight, whispered, "Don't be a stranger." Logan gave me a mock punch in the arm and a half smile. Monica didn't come back downstairs. I didn't expect her to. I didn't need a dramatic farewell. No final plea. Just closure. And so I left. I drove with no destination, just the road and the hum of tires and the horizon calling like a fresh breath. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. I rolled down the window and let the wind mess up my hair. I didn't know where I was headed, but I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't trying to numb the pain or chase desire or patch myself together through someone else's affection. I was finally mine again, and that was enough.